Alright, g'day guys, welcome back to the True Footy YouTube channel. Today we are going to be doing just the tips, as usual, this time without Drewzy. And yes, I can hear you all cheering from here. Unfortunately, couldn't make it happen this week. I had to leave town on Monday, on the day we usually record. So, Drewzy had to record the True Footy show with Caden. And yeah, I will be doing just the tips for you today with a little bit less preparation. I know what you're thinking. Gee, the usual show is prepared for? Well, yeah, just a little bit. But today I am going to be going through, pretty much going through the Squiggle website like I did pretty much for all of last year, and talking you through my thinking as we get on with the tips. So I've been a little bit on the back foot with content this week, life gets in the way. But I've got the week off, so I've got plenty of things planned this week. So hopefully we'll be a bit more consistent this coming round. So just to give you an update on the footy tipping situation for this season, I actually changed 2 tips this round, and I got 7 out of 9, and Drewzy only got 6, and Dad only got 5 for Dad Watch there. So for one of the very, very rare occasions this year, I have come out with the chocolates. I changed my tip to North Melbourne over Carlton. Don't remember doing it, but thank God I did. And then I changed my tip to West Coast when I saw that Rowan Marshall was out for the Saints, and ended up just scraping that one home as well. So Drewzy is sitting at 45th in the overall competition after his 6 with 109 correct tips. I sit 12 behind him despite beating him this round with 97, and I sit 452nd, which is just, hurtful. And just a little bit of an acknowledgement there for Dad Watch. He's still at 106 despite the fact that I beat him this round. So I need to make up nearly 3 tips a round. I'm going to have to start going bold. As always, we like to shout out the winners and the best performers of each round and the overall leader as well. So the round 19 winner actually goes to someone who's been on this channel before. My good friend Brendan Courtney, or B Courtney 1, had 9 correct tips and a margin of 1. That's ridiculous. I don't know if you guys have been watching that long, but if you look at the 2 fantasy podcasts we've done, Brendan is on that podcast as well. So shout out Brendan. Overall, he's only on 93, but yeah, good on him. And the overall leader is still Ignatius Sim, who had 8 correct tips this round and moves up to 117 with a cumulative margin of 551. And once again, in terms of fantasy, no surprise, Whelan and Dealan, aka Jeremy Whelan, is still our leader with 2,047 average points per round. That is absolutely phenomenal. Well done, Jeremy. Before we get into the video, guys, do remember that this video is brought to you by our sponsors, MANSCAPED. They specialize in male grooming products such as the Lawnmower 3.0, but also you've got, this ball deodorant here. I don't know why I have all these at my desk. You have the ball toner, and you have something called a crop mop as well. So you have a heap of different products here. It's like a ball moisturizer, and this one is actually ball wipes for active pH control. And I just received the Shears 2.0, as you can see, a variety of different clippers in there. And I have to say that this new cologne that they've brought out is absolutely awesome as well. I'm big into my colognes now. Really, really love the smell of men's cologne. That sounds weird. Anyway, just a heap of different products, not just the Lawnmower 3.0. So if you go to their website, manscaped.com, use the code TrueFooty20, all caps, all one word, you get 20% off and free shipping on their great products. So go check that out. Let's get into the video. All right, here we are back on squiggle.com now, looking at the round, which I believe has been finally fixtured. I guess there's no such thing as being completely fixtured with, the nature of COVID at the moment. Things are pretty up in the air, but we can assume at the moment that St Kilda versus Carlton is the first game at Marvel Stadium there. This is kind of an interesting one. I feel like St Kilda have really shown an improvement in their form. I'm just getting their stats up. Obviously, lost to the Eagles last week. I thought they played fairly well without Marshall. Normally, I think there's a huge correlation between them winning and Rowan Marshall being in the side, but they, other than a second quarter blitz, I thought they've held their own pretty well and nearly overran the Eagles, although I think the Eagles kind of ran out of steam. Week before that, they lost to Port, and before that, they started to string together some wins. So starting to resemble something of a final side, and if they are something resembling a final side, then I think that would be far too good for Carlton, who obviously just got rolled by North Melbourne. Now, again, need to contextualise it. North are playing pretty good. Larky had, was it 6 or 7 goals? I think he kicked 7, actually. And they just got monstered. North are looking really good at the moment, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about them later on. But nothing Carlton's doing other than, Sam Walsh dominating is giving me any confidence they're going to knock off a team that I would say are better than them. Although, there's only 4 points and, minus 5% between them. So on the ladder, looks like these two sides are fairly evenly matched, but I think St Kilda are clearly better. So I know I'm going to look silly when Carlton win this, but I'm going to tip St Kilda by 18 points. Next game is the Dogs and Adelaide at Eureka Stadium, which I believe is Mars in Ballarat. Fairly simple tip. I would have thought the Dogs just coming off probably the most significant result of their season. They were fantastic against the Demons, who look, not quite right at the moment. But regardless, the Dogs have barely put a foot wrong this year. Their midfield is chugging away, as they say, and their forward line's looking really, really damaging as well. And I can't really imagine an Adelaide side who's coming off a good win against Hawthorn in what was basically an away game that they'd lost. It should have been at Adelaide Oval, played it at Marvel, showed really good spirit and won. Even at their best, I can't see Adelaide having the legs to really challenge the Dogs here, particularly in Ballarat, which is, quite foreign to them. So I'm going to say the Dogs have a reasonably big win here. I'm going to say 35 points. Oh, the third game of the round it's not simple. It's not as simple as it once was. North Melbourne hosting Geelong, particularly down in Tasmania, is what's making me a little bit iffy about this. Obviously, we're talking about North Melbourne, who are coming off that 40-point win against Carlton, where so many of their young guns fired. I think Taron Thomas, in addition to Larkey, had 4 goals and 23, I want to say. Jaden Stevenson's continuing a really good season, sort of as a midfielder forward now, rather than just like a pure forward. So plenty to like about North. They're playing well and above the standard of a bottom team. This is a very strong Geelong side though, so they just pumped Richmond, and even though I think they've got some outs, I think Cameron's still out if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he's coming back this week. He's probably a bit early for him, but you can't tip North here, but this will be interesting. I think the Tasmania factor, depending on the conditions, could be a good equaliser. I think it'll be closer than what people might expect. I'll say 22 points, but this is also Geelong, one of the flag fancies, if not the main team to beat right now. So I'll say Geelong win, but that could be a little bit of a nervy one for them. Gold Coast is now playing Melbourne. It's got here on the screen Wellington in New Zealand. I think we can rule that out. But I think there's doubt about where this game's going to be played. It was originally fixtured for Darwin, if I'm not mistaken. This is one of the delayed games. And I'd imagine, I'm not across all the COVID shit at the moment because there's so much of it going on across the whole country, but I'd imagine the Northern Territory will have issues about teams coming in. So does that mean it's Metricon? I don't see why not. It seems like it's a Gold Coast home game. Yeah, I don't see why not. It would be a bit of a shame for Gold Coast to have to play this in Melbourne. So it doesn't really matter because the Suns, right, are coming off that weird Q clash where they were 5 goals in front or something like that, 4 goals in front, and it was an 83-point turnaround, something stupid like that. And the Lions ended up winning by 50 points, but they are coming off an improved period of form now. People are starting to think, Gold Coast have overcome a lot of their woes. I hate myself. Gold Coast have sort of overcome the issues they've had in the past of running out seasons. They're looking better later in the season than we've seen. There's a lot to like about their development. It's been a slow and steady case. Is that enough for them to really challenge Melbourne? Look, maybe, because Melbourne obviously not looking infallible themselves. They've obviously just drawn to Hawthorn and dropped the points against the Dogs now. Dogs now sit currently top of the ladder, so hard to mark them too harshly for that. But I think they've proven themselves vulnerable against the bottom teams. They've lost to Adelaide and drew with Hawthorn. I'd like to think the D's will not be caught napping here because it's getting to that point where if they keep dropping games, they could risk their spot in the top 4. Look, I don't actually think Melbourne is realistically going to lose this. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Just kind of trying to build a case for why this might be closer, but I'll say Melbourne pull their finger out and win this by 34 points. Next up is Collingwood versus West Coast at the MCG. A little bit of a rivalry game, even though these two sides are not really relevant to each other this year. It's the second time they played this year. I was originally going to go to this game, so obviously with the COVID situation, that kind of went out the window. But nonetheless, it's a Saturday game, I believe, at this stage. And the Pies have been a little bit poor in the last few. I think maybe it's a bit harsh. I think they've gotten younger and therefore, the standard of what's poor is probably lower. So I'm probably being harsh, but I'm more referring to the Carlton loss where they'd beaten the Blues earlier this season and could have fancied themselves to win that. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but they're playing a lot of youth at the moment, which makes them hard to really feel confident in. I think their last 5 also includes losses to St Kilda and Fremantle, so teams that just above them. So they haven't really done enough here to make me think they'll beat the Eagles. That being said, the strongest case for the Eagles losing this game is the Eagles returning to their worst form, which has been really, really poor this year at times. They've obviously, I think, pulled their finger out a little bit with the wins against Adelaide and St Kilda, more playing a sort of recognisable Eagles brand that I'm used to seeing. I do have a little bit of confidence in that. So, I mean, I also think the MCG doesn't hold any fears for the Eagles. So, without rambling on too much, I think the Eagles are a fair favourite here. And I'll be very shocked if they don't win this. Be very gutted, but look, wouldn't be the worst loss this year, to be honest, and that says something. So I'll say that by 4 goals we'll win. Next up is Essendon versus Sydney at the Gabba. Is that right? Is that actually where this game is fixtured? I need to verify that. It is at the Gabba. That is fascinating. Okay, so we know that Sydney have already had at least 1 win at the Gabba from the top of my head, and they're obviously staying in Queensland. They beat the Lions in round 1 of this year. And earlier this year, these two sides played and it was really close from memory. I think Sydney won by about 3 points. I feel like there's a weird trade-off here where these teams like play well against each other. There's always a thriller. So, this is a tough one, hey. I can seriously see the Bombers winning this. Obviously, they dropped that crucial top 8 clash against the Giants, but they haven't really had too many off days this year, Essendon, in terms of performing well below what we expect, and GWS can be a good side. That's the thing. So I don't know how harshly to mark Essendon. They probably do need to win this to stay in the top 8 hunt, and this is gettable for them. Well, look, we know how good Sydney are. Sydney are fantastic. I was watching the first half against Fremantle, and Fremantle sort of were strutting their stuff, looking real good, and then Sydney just completely overpowered them. And then on top of that, the big win over West Coast, and who was it that they beat? The Dogs, that's right. They beat the Dogs. So people starting to talk about Sydney as an outside chance for a flag. They need to win this to stay in the touch for 4. I got a weird upset feeling about this. I'm going to hate myself if Essendon win. I'll tip Sydney. I'll go 6 points in a thriller. Now we'll move into what I think is the Sunday games. You got Hawthorn hosting Brisbane down in Tasmania. Now, when a couple of weeks ago we thought this game was going ahead in Melbourne, I think I tipped Hawthorn for the upset. Okay, so I don't know how I feel about that now because Adelaide just did Hawthorn in Melbourne, and the Lions started really poorly in the Q clash, as I referred to, and then overpowered them. So kind of maybe have their own confidence momentum back. And like they're currently 6 on the live ladder, as you can see up the top right there. So obviously, if they drop this game, their position in the top 4, or sorry, at least contending for the top 4, becomes a lot harder. And frankly, even their spot in the top 6 becomes a lot less strong. So plenty to play for the Lions. In Tasmania, actually, I don't know what their head-to-head is or the Lions' form in Tasmania, but I'm actually more confident than if this game was at the G, where I know the Lions haven't really been great. So I'm going to tip the Lions here. I'll tip them by 25 points. But we do know any version of Hawthorn could come out and win this game. It's going to be an interesting one, but I think the Lions will win. The next game of the round is GWS versus Port Adelaide. Again, it says Wellington, but that's just because the location hasn't been decided yet. GWS were just in Queensland playing the Dons, and Port Adelaide are in Melbourne hubbing. So it's GWS home game, so I'm curious as to where this would be played. I would have thought maybe Queensland if GWS had the choice. Yeah, I don't know what they would prefer there. But mind you, Port Adelaide are a pretty proven Queensland side judging on 2020, so we'll see. I think we can assume it's going to be neutral anyway. So obviously the Giants coming off a really good game against the Dons, where again they needed to win to keep their season alive. I didn't expect them to. I thought the Dons were going to be too good, but as GWS typically have done this year, they come up and win when you don't expect them to. Port Adelaide got the job done against Collingwood in their second clash in Melbourne this year, if I'm not mistaken. That game was obviously originally meant for Adelaide, and they lost the home game and still got the job done against Collingwood. So great to see, and it seems like, if I'm not mistaken, a few of their stars are coming back into their side and they're strengthening. And look, if they win this game, they're back in the top 4, obviously on the live ladder, because they'll start the round in the top 4, but if they win, they consolidate that, and if they lose, they slip out. So it's, again, every game is like a little mini final for them at the moment. The GWS are plucky, though, and Lachie Whitfield can really tear teams up when he's on form. This is the sort of game the Giants would win. But again, we have to give respect to Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide don't often drop games you don't expect. I'm going to say Port Adelaide win this by... It's too conservative for a guy that's 9 tips down or 10 tips down on Drewzy. Actually, I think it's 12. I'll say power. I might change that if I'm feeling real risque on the day. The final game of the round is Fremantle versus Richmond at Optus Stadium. Fremantle, played against Sydney at Metricon and started off pretty good. They got out to about a 17-point lead in the second term, and I was literally watching it going, oh shit. Oh, great. This is fantastic. Just what I need. Fremantle fans starting to get confident. And then they got absolutely rolled. I think they only kicked 2 goals after that second quarter period where they dominated. So, and it obviously also came at the loss of Walters and Fife. Now, Fremantle have shown in the past, Walters and Fife can go down and they don't really drop off. So that's not actually hugely swaying my thinking here. I want to say their winning record without Fife is pretty similar to what it would be with Fife. Maybe someone can do the research for me there. And then Walters, again, he hasn't really had a great season. If this was last year, I'd be more worried. But I don't think they rely on him as much as they once did. So from a Fremantle perspective, it's a mini final. If they lose, they're pretty much out of the running. They kind of have to win every game from here just about. So very, very outside chance of finals. Richmond, on the other hand, will certainly think they're still in with a sniff despite being, level on points with Fremantle. I think their run home might be a little bit easier to contend with. They just got belted by the Cats, but to be honest, who doesn't get belted by the Cats? I think I saw the stat where the last 3 teams that play against Geelong only kicked 1 goal to halftime in all of those games. So Richmond were again a victim of that really strong defence. Came out a little bit in the second half. Obviously without Dusty, people are sort of running off their firepower. And to be fair, they didn't really demonstrate a lot of firepower, but I think their form has improved from a few weeks ago, similar to West Coast, where people were saying, are they one of the worst teams in the comp? No, they've overcome that form slump a little bit. I don't know who to tip here, to be honest. I wish I'd thought of this before I'd started the video. My gut is saying Richmond for some reason. Yeah, I'll probably say Richmond. I just think more likely to turn it on in a finals-like atmosphere. Fremantle have been pretty good at home, and I don't think Richmond, on exposed form, really hold too many fears. They're definitely beatable. But I will say Richmond win this by 12 points. And then we'll take a look at the ladder. Richmond move back into the top 8 at the expense of the Giants based on that result. The D's are in 3rd, which I think, is that where they are now anyway? Yeah, I think that's where they are now. So if I'm not mistaken, the only ladder change there is Richmond coming in for the Giants. And you look at that final 8 race, and there's still only 1 win separating 8th from 12th, although with the run home, it's getting real dicey for teams like Fremantle, and even Essendon blew a huge opportunity there. So St Kilda's still in the mix, which is stupid, but I think they've got a reasonable run home now. So it's getting interesting. All right, guys, that is all my tips for this round. I do enjoy doing it with Drews. It's a bit more fun. As far as I'm aware, pending any lockdowns, touch wood, next week we'll go with the usual format. Drewzy will be back on the show. I got a few interesting things coming up this week, hoping to get Caden on the True Footy podcast as well. So yeah, stay tuned for some hopefully half decent content. Subscribe if you're new, like the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.